You pay $20 a month for ChatGPT. To answer you, OpenAI spends far more than that, and on its heaviest users, the true bill behind a single subscription can climb into the thousands. So here is the question this whole episode is built around. If your $20 does not cover the cost, who actually pays the difference? Start with one fact. In 2024, OpenAI took in around $3.7 billion and lost roughly $5 billion. That is not a typo, and it is not a rounding error. The company loses money on the exact product you are using right now, and, this is the strange part, it loses a little more every time you use it more. That is the puzzle. A product used by hundreds of millions of people, priced at the cost of 2 coffees, bleeding billions. This is the cut. One product, one price, and the full money trail down to the last hand that touches it. Today, the product is your $20 ChatGPT subscription, and the story is the invisible bill that somebody else is quietly covering so that yours can stay cheap. So let us start with what you are actually buying. $20 a month gets you ChatGPT Plus, faster models, higher limits, the genuinely useful tier. Below it sits a free plan that costs you nothing. Above it sits ChatGPT Pro at $200 a month. And here is the first crack in the official story. OpenAI's own chief executive, Sam Altman, publicly admitted the company is losing money on that $200 Pro plan. Not the free tier, the most expensive one they sell. In his words, "I personally chose the price and thought we would make some money. Then," he said, "people used it much more than we expected." Sit with that for a second. If the $200 tier loses money, what do you suppose your $20 tier is doing? It is not quietly turning a profit, I promise you. If you want to understand where your money really goes every single time you spend it, subscribe. One product, the full money trail every week. Because the number printed on the price tag and the number it actually costs to deliver are two completely different figures. The distance between those two numbers is the entire reason this channel exists, and today that distance is enormous. Keep that gap in mind, because everything that follows is just the story of who quietly fills it. So where does the money actually go? You follow it down the chain, one hand at a time, and you do not skip a link. It begins with a chip. Every answer ChatGPT gives you is computed on specialized processors called GPUs, and almost all of the ones that matter come from a single company, Nvidia. When you type a question, you are renting a sliver of a machine stuffed with Nvidia hardware. And Nvidia is doing extraordinarily well out of this arrangement. In its 2025 financial year, Nvidia reported $130 billion in revenue, up 114% in a single year. The part of the business that sells AI chips, its data center segment, grew 142%. But here is the number that should stop you. Nvidia's gross margin was 75%. 75 cents of every dollar it charges is gross profit. Hold on to that figure, because we are going to come back to it. Next hand down the chain, the data center itself. OpenAI does not own most of the computers it runs on. It rents them, in large part, from Microsoft's Azure cloud. Microsoft is a company with a 68% gross margin that has poured billions of dollars into OpenAI and earns a chunk of it back as cloud bills. So your harmless little prompt runs on Nvidia silicon sitting inside a Microsoft building, billed by the second. Next hand, electricity, and a lot of it. These machines are enormously power hungry. Analysts estimate that ChatGPT's Inference, the technical word for the act of answering you, costs on the order of $700,000 a day, spread across tens of thousands of GPUs running around the clock. That works out to roughly $250 million a year just to keep the answers flowing. And the final hand, before any of this reaches your screen, is OpenAI itself. The researchers, the training runs, the enormous salaries in a brutal talent war. This is the link with no public filing, because OpenAI is a private company, so we label it honestly. This part is estimate, not audited gospel. But the direction is not in doubt. Add up the chips, the cloud, the power, and the people, and the real cost to serve you lands well above $20. For a casual user, a little above. For the heaviest users, the ones firing off long, complex reasoning queries all day long, dramatically above. A single advanced query, by some analyst estimates, can cost around $1,000 to run. You will probably never trigger that in a normal month. But the entire system has to be built and paid for around the people who do. So let us lay the whole thing out on the table. Who took which cut of the AI economy that your subscription helps to feed? Picture all of it as a single pie. The slice almost everyone assumes is the biggest, OpenAI's profit, simply does not exist. There is no profit slice to point at. OpenAI is running at a loss. In 2024, that loss was somewhere around $5 billion. Now, the slice that is genuinely, almost comically fat belongs to Nvidia. 75% gross margin, $130 billion in revenue, and just under $73 billion in net income in a single financial year. Read that one more time, slowly. The company selling the shovels made about $73 billion. The most famous company actually digging for the gold lost $5. This is exactly what the cut does. We follow every dollar all the way to the hand that keeps it. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one, because this is the reveal that most people have completely backwards. When you pay for ChatGPT, you are not making OpenAI rich. You are helping to fund a frantic, expensive race. And the clear winner of that race, by an enormous margin so far, is not any of the runners. It is the company quietly selling boots and shovels to every single one of them. Now compare the tiers head to head, because the math only gets stranger the closer you look at it. Free users pay nothing, and they cost real money to serve. Plus, users pay $20, pro users pay $200, and even they, by Altman's own admission, can lose the company money. See the pattern yet? Every single tier is priced below what the heaviest users inside it actually cost to serve. It is flat pricing stretched over a wildly variable bill. Your gym pulls the same trick. It sells far more memberships than it has treadmills, betting that most people will never show up. OpenAI is making the same bet, that most of you will never fire off a $1,000 query. The difference is the sheer scale of the bet. With something like 900 million weekly users and around 50 million of them paying, even a tiny loss per heavy user compounds into billions. So who actually covers that gap? Investors. Microsoft's $13 billion wager. A wall of venture money betting that today's losses are the entry fee for tomorrow's monopoly. Which means you are not the customer being squeezed for profit here. You are a subsidized seat inside somebody else's much larger gamble. And your $20 is the smallest number in the entire equation. So what if you had known all of this before you ever hit send? Honestly, probably nothing would change. And that is the quiet genius of how this is built. The price you see is $20. The cost you do not see is carried by Nvidia's customers, by Microsoft's shareholders, and by a wall of investors betting on a future that has not actually arrived yet. But there is one more twist worth knowing, and it is the one that holds the whole fragile thing together. The cost of answering you is falling fast. Inference for an older model like GPT 3.5 dropped by more than 280 times in under 2 years. The entire bet, the thing every dollar in this chain is wagering on, is simply this: that cost falls faster than usage rises. If it does, today's spectacular losses quietly turn into the most profitable business in human history. And if it does not, then sooner or later, someone, somewhere, decides to stop paying your difference. Think about what that really means for a moment. A 280-fold collapse in cost is not a discount. It is the only reason any of this is allowed to keep running at a loss for as long as it has. So here is your $20, put back together one last time. A few cents of it genuinely touch OpenAI. The rest of the true cost, the chips, the cloud, the power, the people, is many times larger than what you paid, and almost all of it is covered by someone who is not you. Nvidia keeps the fattest cut at 75 cents on the dollar. Microsoft and the investors quietly cover the gap, and you, in the middle of all of it, get the most expensive software ever built for roughly the price of 2 coffees. Everyone takes a cut. That never changes. This time, the only real surprise is who is footing the bill. This was the cut. Now you know. So the next time you open that little chat box and type something trivial, remember, a chip designer in California, a cloud giant in Seattle, a power grid, and a room full of investors all just chipped in so that your answer could cost you nothing extra. That is the cut. And now you can see exactly where it goes.